someone who is like a stripper or an adult entertainer having this incredibly intellectual conversation on a podcast. And it's like, why is that surprising? These things should not be so surprising to us that this person is not one-dimensional. I think right now we have a big minimalism problem.
The strange following that minimalism has got, to where it's kind of like an exclusive group of woke individuals who are minimalist. Greetings and welcome back to another episode of The Bit Between. Today we have Anthony Ongaro with us. How are you doing, man?
Doing well, thanks for having me.
So I first saw Anthony on the internet a couple of years back, and I've been subscribed to his newsletter and watching his stuff for a long time. Anthony, do you mind giving people a bit of a background to yourself and introducing yourself?
Absolutely. So I started something called Break the Twitch years ago at this point, back in 2014. And really, it was a blog for me that was reaching out to explore the themes and ideas around intentionality. I personally had something that I called a twitch that I was exploring, trying to learn more about, which was the kind of a one-click purchase sort of thing that was happening quite a bit over and over. And so looking at those patterns and looking to understand the difference between impulse and intentionality, really. And in exploring that through writing and eventually YouTube videos and podcasting, and Break the Twitch has evolved over the years also to look at minimalism, habits, and then creativity and creative flow. And really the big picture to the puzzle is attention. And that's now really the center of everything I've done, and all of the work that I'm doing is around this idea of owning your attention and what that means, and how we use minimalism and habits and all these other fun tools to accomplish that. Yeah.
So your main idea of Break the Twitch. In fact, I'll let you explain it. I know you've probably told this story time and time again, but do you mind telling people how it kind of came about?
Yeah, the origin story, which we've clearly brought in quite a bit from this initial drive, but the origin story was that I had a particular habit of just buying little things here and there on Amazon.com. I was working in a very stressful job, and things were just kind of crazy at the time. And there was one day where we kind of had my wife and I had a discussion around, it's like, there are a lot of these brown boxes showing up, and I never really thought it was a big deal because it was just $10, $20, some accessory, some small thing. And we were working in good jobs and we were comfortable, but this was a repeated pattern that just it was always something else, right? And one day we pulled 4 years of all of the purchase history, which is something you can do on Amazon or any other site, I think. You can go in and get an Excel spreadsheet of every purchase you've ever made. And so I went back and did 4 years, and those small purchases, those small repeated actions, just like good things, well, small repeated not great things can add up to a massive sum. And that's exactly what it was for a person, early in my life. It was something like, $12,000 in 4 years, which now a lot of people spend that per year, I think, on Amazon, just because they get everything. It's so easy to get everything there. So the scale of the story maybe doesn't work so well anymore, but at the same time, for me, that was really big. And it was a moment of realization that a lot of the bigger things that I wanted in my life, the things that were important, the ability to show up for friends, to travel, to see family, to be at weddings, that the things that felt like they were out of reach, were not in fact out of reach, and I was just making them out of reach by allowing these like small impulses to take them away. So that really began the exploration of what are the other small things that are happening in my life day to day that are undermining my values, that are undermining my intentions. And it sort of just went off to the races from there.
Yeah. And you kind of went on to explore minimalism and habits and all these great things. But do you mind telling us a little bit about what life was before you discovered all these things, before you managed to kind of take control of your attention and live life a bit more intentionally?
It was very different. You can, wow, that's a very good question. And there's so many different ways I could answer that question right now, because I think it's good and it's bad, right? In a lot of ways, what I believe I've found through this work is awareness and self-compassion. So maybe I can paint the picture of before by painting a bit more of the picture of now to see what was without. Yeah. The work has really helped me understand that a lot of the Twitch, the purchases or different things, is a very prominent form of coping. You're just coping and trying to get some dopamine and some distractions from things that can be very stressful. I was in a job that I really believed was my dream job when I applied for it, and I got it. It was like this really big thing, and I loved the work that I did, but it was also an incredibly high pressure job in a very difficult environment, in a nonprofit where it's just very stressful. And, you know, being in that environment causes a lot of just sort of anxiety and stress, and it's just one of those types of things. Doing marketing for a nonprofit, it's never done. You know, you're never done. And so I never felt satisfied with myself or with the work that I had done in any particular day, constantly feeling just like I wasn't enough. And that was a theme through different parts of my life before this as well. And I think it's still a work in progress now. You know, I think it's still something that's evolving in terms of just feeling like I'm enough. And, you know, as I'm doing these things, it is enough, and I'm doing my best, right? These are things that are really hard to embrace, especially when you've had a more critical voice, you know, in your mind or in your voice in your life, earlier in life. It's quite challenging. So that's a bit of what it looked like. I was happy, but I was stressed, and I wasn't super aware. I think that's really what it comes down to, is I didn't understand or recognize the small things that were happening. They were just happening. And I thought that was me. I just thought it was me, not this thing that was a reaction to my circumstance. Yeah. And that's been one of the biggest changes, realizing that when those things are happening, it's not me. It's just like this extension that I need to ground myself. I need to come back to earth and like meditate and get back into a more stabilized place so that I can be more intentional with my actions.
Yeah. I can empathize with that a lot, because my story is a little bit similar. I had a job that actually I didn't really enjoy, but over the course of 5 months I earned around about £1,500, which seems like a lot of money, you know, when I think I was 16. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. And when I was looking back at it, I was like, hold on, that seems like a lot of money. Where did all that money go? Because I looked in my bank account and there was nowhere near that amount of money in there. So I kind of went through all my purchases and, you know, the people or the things that I'd been spending my money on. And I was like, wow, I've really just let all this money go somewhere. And I don't really know what these purchases have brought me. And then that's kind of where I found minimalism and, you know, your content and a few other creators. And I kind of was like, maybe I should be a bit more intentional and realize that sometimes buying things isn't going to be the answer to my problems.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how without that intentionality around the big picture, it does just sort of, that's the problem. Things just sort of like fade away, and you're like, wait, where did that go?
Yeah.
You know? Like food on a plate too. It's like, you know, if you're just on your phone while you're eating, I've noticed this too. You'll look down and like the whole bag of chips is gone, and you're like, wait, what happened? I wasn't, you know, it's easy to walk through and not be, intentional with that.
So I'm really grateful that I found minimalism, but when I try to share the message, some people are quite reluctant to even give it a chance. What do you think some of the barriers or the misconceptions around minimalism are that kind of people get thrown off by, or, you know, deterred by, so that they don't want to give it a go?
It's a great question, and I'm very curious about your take on this as well afterwards, because I think right now we have a big minimalism problem, and it's sort of been, it's always been the visual arts element of minimalism, which is the the clean white spaces with the plants and the emptiness and the void and bright brick walls and big windows. And like, to me, that's just rich. Like, that's just like what you have when you're rich, you know, like you have these high-end luxury apartments and condos and things and big sweeping spaces. And to me, that's an incredibly deceptive and unproductive version of minimalism and approach. I think it's beautiful, and I think it can be appreciated, and I think it can be a wonderful experience to live in something like that, perhaps. But in a lot of ways, if that is the approach, which I think is now with Matt D'Avella, like, you know, bringing in this massive kind of second, third wave of creators that are creating in this space, that are making these like perfect videos of these high-end, you know, living situations, it feels like we're losing a wonderful opportunity to look at minimalism as simply a tool to focus our attention on the things that matter. And that's really where a lot of my work lies now. It is simply looking at minimalism not as, well, can I be a minimalist if I still have a lot of books? Yes. Yeah, you can have a lot of things. There's no rules. It's simply use this, for me, is what it means. Minimalism is a way to make sure that the things that are not benefiting you or the people you care about are not taking away attention that is very valuable and really allows you to, you know, be more grounded and have more space to actually exist in a more planted place. That doesn't have anything to do with white walls or, you know, like
plants and cactuses and
the tiny cactuses. You know, plants are great, but it's not a requirement. So anyway, I think it can be easy to get lost in that perception of something that looks like an architecture magazine and think that if I don't have that, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
But I think it's for everyone.
Yeah. I'd have to agree with you on a lot of your points. And I don't want to criticize, you know, the big minimalism creators too much. You know, they've helped me a lot. You know, I've listened to their content, and
I love
you know,
Matt. I want to be very clear. Like, Matt's a friend of mine. I don't want to.
Cancel Anthony Ongaro.
No. I love Matt. Matt's a great guy. Yeah.
And again, you know, it's just that the images that they have, i.e., the perfection, and you know how every single scene that a lot of them sort of creators have just looks so good and has the best camera gear and the audio sounds so good, and like, you know, the place that they live in is just so perfect, where I think we have kind of lost touch with the whole idea behind it. It's kind of like, I think the idea behind minimalism is live with things that try to live with mainly the things that bring you value. But I think with it becoming more popularized, it's been like, oh, try to live with these things that give you the image of minimalism. I think that's how I've seen it. Another thing I've seen is kind of I don't know what the right word is, but the strange following that minimalism has got, to where it's kind of like an exclusive group of woke individuals who are minimalist. What are your thoughts on that kind of thing going on?
Sure. I believe that with any type of tool or any type of movement or belief, there's an opportunity to gatekeep. I think there's an opportunity to for people to involve ego and want to be part of a club that has some air to it, or something like, a bit of pretension. And that's fine. You know, I think it's fine if people want to use minimalist as a label. It does help. Labels do help us understand quickly. We can go, oh yeah, I'm a minimalist. So you probably have similar values around simple living and things like that. But really, what does it mean? For me, that's gonna, you can see my production light sticking out of my closet right now. And if you're watching the video, and I do not really value it in the traditional sense of having 5 things or 10 things, simply as a tool set. And for me, that works really well. It's very helpful. in honing my own attention day to day. So,
and to kind of expand on that, I think one thing that people that comes to mind when people talk about minimalism is this idea of getting rid of everything, which really isn't the main thing. Like, people think, oh, you're being a minimalist, so what? You're just gonna live with like a mattress on the floor and a bowl and a spoon, and that's it. And it's like, no, I just want to live with things that, you know, I actually enjoy using or bring value to me. And it's difficult for me to do that because some of my family are relatively materialistic, right? And so when they're like, oh, so what would you like for your birthday? I'm like, nothing. Like, there's pretty much nothing there's nothing that you could get me that would bring value to my life right now. Like, I've gotten rid of stuff. I don't need more stuff. But it's really difficult to kind of convince those people who are kind of set in their ways. And, you know, that might work for them and that's fine. But it's difficult to kind of empathize, at least, on both ends.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's an interesting balance because culturally, it's so interesting because minimalism can be sort of seen as like a solution. As humans, I kind of mentioned labels. I think we look for the situation where we can go, look, just what are the rules? Just tell me what to do. Like, where do I get to be happy? When do I get the badge? You know, like, is it 100 things? You know, what's the deal? For some people, having a bowl and one spoon and one box of cereal and 1 gallon of milk, I don't know why you'd have 2 gallons of milk, but you know, whatever it is, like, for them, if that works because it helps, then great. But that's not going to be, we're all so different and we all have different things. Like, and so we want this, like, it's almost going it's almost going full circle around right back to the beginning where we're obsessed with stuff again. First it was acquiring because it makes us feel good about our status and who we are and like that dopamine. And then we come all the way around like, no, less stuff is better. Do I have little enough stuff now?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we're just like thinking about status again and what it means.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to get caught up in this stuff. And the reality is there's no answer.
Yeah.
That the answer is in the process. And that's where the habits and these parts come in, is the only way to find this and find contentment, in my experience, in terms of this, is not to hit a certain number of things or become a certain type of minimalist, but it is to go through the process of questioning what adds value to my life and what doesn't, and then acting on it. That's minimalism. Like, it doesn't end. We evolve. We are humans. We're growing. It's a forever process if you're doing it right. And in stepping into each time we make that decision, becoming a little bit more confident about who we are with and without that thing. Realizing that we're not defined by it. Realizing that we have all this, you know, capability and all this, just we're enough. That's really what it's about for me. Just finding the ways that we can understand and question the value of these things around us and how we relate to those things. And that's where it really starts to get. But how do you explain that? You know, how do you explain that to a new person coming in who sees big windows and white walls and ultra minimalist, high-end clothing, stuff like that?
Well, let me ask you this. Try and explain minimalism in one sentence. I know you're going to hate that, but just...
It's a very minimalist question of you to ask. I'm a bit, I really should have an answer for this just right off the bat, but I want to choose my words carefully. Wow, because I'm almost ready to change what would be my typical answer to this, in that minimalism is the process of acting upon what will give you the space to do what you need to do with your life. So it's almost a verb.
Yeah.
More than it's a noun, I guess, or a thing to be.
I mean, I was talking to a guy called Josh Terry, and he said this really interesting thing. And he said, people want a religion. People want something that they can follow to the T that's going to get them to the place that they want to be. Whether that place be, success or happiness or enough or whatever that might be. They want a step-by-step process that they can just follow that gives them all the answers. And, you'll probably know this a lot more than me. It probably doesn't exist. There is no end. There is no final destination. I mean, apart from death, but that's a bit dark.
But that's the truth.
Yeah.
It's a big arc. Just, yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
We're all looking for answers, and people are quick to sell us answers. And that's one of the very confusing things about the Attention Collective, which is my community, my member community for Break the Twitch. I'm like, yeah, no, there's tools and courses and different things, but like none of it is, it's all just, ingredients. Like you have to create your own recipe, and it's hard to sell that, right? It's hard to sell like you creating your own answer to a thing, but that's the only way to do it really that works.
Yeah. Before we talk more about the Attention Collective and how you've kind of built that community, I just want to touch on one thing. I hate that people exploit the human need for wanting an answer or a solution. I was talking to my mum about this, and there's all these fake gurus out there. I don't even want to name them. I don't even want to have their names in my mouth. That just sell these courses, sell these ideas that, once you buy this thing or take my course or whatever, read my book, you will have all the answers. You will have everything you need to be successful. And at first I'd get annoyed at them, but now it just makes me sad that they're exploiting so many people, and these poor people are just going from one to the next, to the next, to the next, until maybe one day they might realize, and some people might not, that this solution is not there. It's really not there.
Yeah, it's. Is it capitalism? Is it human nature? Is it evolution? I don't know. But to a certain extent, it seems like since the dawn of religion, or since the dawn of bigger than 150 person tribes and communities in human civilization, there has had to be some form of answers, right? Some form of questioning and answers to those questions in order to create a movement. And so, as a person who even earlier in life has been down that path of trying, what's the system? Like, even in productivity, we have the same thing. Todoist, I've tried every productivity app, Todoist, Asana, like every system, and all of these systems, they all offer value. Whether it's the concept of minimalism or whether it's a Todoist or whatever, all of these things offer value. They offer a perspective, something to try to see if it's a perspective that works well for you. But none of them are the answer, like 42, like the meaning of life. None of it is actually the answer, and we're not going to find it there. And the more and more I explore these things, and at this point, I'm 35, so I'm almost, twice your age, I guess. And in this time, I can say that the only true answer that I've found around productivity is learning to embrace self-compassion, and then changing the way you move about the world from a shame-based drive to needing to be more, to wanting to prove something, to a like loving your attention, which is what I talk about, like loving what you do, and then exploring and being ambitious from a safe place where it's not a bad thing if you fail, where it's this launching pad that you can go off of. But in order to do that, we have to switch. And that's a very weird thing to have to do, because it's an entire motivational change for a lot of people, myself included.
I mean, I'm not sure how religious you were in the past or anything like that, but for me at least, I went through a phase where I was, really religious. My family's Muslim, and I got really into it. But I felt that the guilt that I felt and the shame whenever I do something wrong, or I even thought something that was against my religion, or that I perhaps shouldn't have been, drawn towards, I just that feeling that you get, the heaviness, was a really awful feeling that I don't get anymore, because I've kind of thought to myself that perhaps guilt tripping myself into not doing something, or that's probably not the right word, but feeling guilty about even the idea of maybe doing something, like that's not a healthy way to live. That's not a productive way to kind of improve upon yourself. Do you mind touching a little bit on your experience of that?
Absolutely, and I appreciate you sharing yours. I feel lucky in a sense around religion. I did grow up within, I was baptized Roman Catholic when I was born, actually. And then I grew up in a more liberal, like a Christian church environment, where all people were welcome and very open in my liberal hometown of Ann Arbor, Michigan. So, I feel very lucky that because that's not the case within Christianity a lot of the time. And so I feel very lucky that I had that particular experience. But I will say I'm not active in a religion at this point, other than just, I would say, being agnostic in general, if you want to, kind of pick a general belief around that. But yeah, I have issue with a lot of that, because I think if you're familiar with the ideas around The Secret, and this is something my wife Amy and I have discussed at length in recent weeks, if you think about like The Secret, where we all have the power to believe and like manifest the things that we want to create in the world, right? And then, we have to take action on those things and see the opportunities, but we can literally shift our minds to be more open to those possibilities. I think a lot of, this is I'm almost hesitant to say it, but I think a lot of religion does get you a good chunk of the way there, but maybe not the final 10 or 20%, where it's like, this idea, I didn't know we were going to take this turn. So this idea of, I've heard this expression saying God is love, right? And I always thought that it meant that the God up there is love. Like it's, that being loves us. And the more and more I thought about it later in life, and the more I process it now, I think that God and spirituality is love, is the love that we have for each other, and the care that we have for our communities and our brothers and sisters and our each other. And spirituality and God exists in that love within ourselves. And it feels entirely empowering, and not, I'm doing this because if I don't, I'm a bad person, but I love myself. I love the people around me, and I'm doing this because I want to be ambitious in serving humanity and in doing the best I can to create things that benefit people and do it in integrity. So it's a difficult. This is a big picture question. And it's something I've grappled with myself, but it's a good question to be asking.
That's a really interesting way of looking at things. I've never really thought of that. The way that I kind of have framed things more recently, or at least thought about, is we have this idea that God is all-loving, omnibenevolent, essentially, in both mine and your religion. But at least from my perspective, the way that I've learned about religion, whether that be through family or through online resources or videos, whatever it might be, is that it's, instead of God will love you more if you do this, it's God won't love you if you do that. And that sort of framework is very destructive, and it leads to what I was touching upon earlier, where you have that fear, that guilt, that idea of like, am I good enough? That insecurity. And that's something that for a long time I had to wrestle with. and had to kind of push through. But as I've come away from religion a little bit more, and I'm probably in a very similar boat to you, as in, like, I'd say if I had to put a label on it, I'm like an agnostic Muslim. So, you know, it's a bit of a strange place that I'm in. But yeah, that's kind of one thing that I've been thinking about a lot. Why do we have this idea that God won't love you if you do this? And why do we share that so much, as opposed to saying, you know what, if you do this, that's a good thing to do? You know, why is it so negative?
Yeah. And I think there are aspects of religion that embrace, I mean, in a way, this is coming full circle, right? I'm seeing how this conversation, looking at minimalism, you mentioned, you kind of tied it to, like, when we look for religion and we look for answers in these labels and these things that we create, you're probably not going to find what you're looking for necessarily. I think it can be a very comforting thing to have answers for people that are looking for answers. It can, to have just a sort of foretold, like, this is because of this, and if you do this, this is going to happen. If you don't, this is going to happen. It's very straightforward, at least in the way that it's spoken about or taught. But can we really believe that life is that clear cut? Can we believe that our existence is? It's why I'm not an atheist. I mean, I'm fine with people that are, but for me personally, I don't think I have the ability to go, nope, this is not this isn't real. I don't know. I believe in, that anything is possible in this realm. I don't have evidence to the contrary. So I think there's a lot of ways that this can be beneficial, like anything. And there's a lot of ways that it can be manipulated and people can be manipulated, and that we need to look at broad incentives whenever we look at anything like this. If someone, I was just watching an author on YouTube who was being interviewed, and he was preaching doom and gloom about the stock market, saying a big crash is coming, this is happening, and he was very convincing. But then if you look, he's written 7 books about how horrible everything's going to be. He's missed predictions, on stock market crashes 10 out of 11 times. And of course, if you keep saying the same thing over and over, eventually you'll be right. Even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? That's the idea. And so we have to look at incentives of where's money going? Where is this thing? And we all have the perception of what we're doing is either good or evil. Watching these things about on Netflix, there's a great series on spycraft, and if it's your spy, you always feel like it's justified. But they're a traitor if they go to the other team.
Yeah.
But they're just it's just the same thing on the other side. So it's all a matter of, like, all of these things I'm realizing. It's so much of our reality is just determined by the perspective we have from where we're sitting, and we all put these glasses in front of our eyes, and that's the reality of it. So as much as we can learn to step away, not judge, which is, again, I think rooted in self-compassion, like, the more we can step back and understand that maybe this isn't what it seems, or maybe this is simply the way of the world, it gives us some relief, I think.
Yeah. Wow, that got deeper than I was expecting today.
Same, yeah.
Yeah. Let's touch a little bit on the Attention Collective that you've managed to make over the last few years. I'm not sure how long has it been going now.
We started what was called the member community back when we started the podcast so it would be a member-supported podcast type of situation. And just at the end of 2019, we turned it into more of an actual community with like regular meetups, and we host workshops and do all kinds of things like that. So it's been about 2 years now, and I actually just got off our social call about an hour ago, just meeting up and chatting.
So what's that been like there? Because we touched before on all these fake gurus. I don't believe you're a fake guru. I think that you.
Thank you.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but I think that
it
you
is.
share.
I mean, I don't openly admit that I have all the answers, so I think it's. I know that myself too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you provide valuable content with people. I'm not a member of the Attention Collective, but I'd love to know what has that kind of dynamic been like, and what's it been like to grow a community of people that you spend time with in a different way to like other members of your fans or community.
Yeah, the community is a wonderful place. The Attention Collective, which is the name we've given it actually just in the last couple months, and it's one of these things where there's sort of a critical mass growing a community to do this sort of work. And kind of going to what we were talking about earlier, I think anytime you have stuff like someone like me who's putting stuff out on YouTube and talking about these things and sharing my own experiences with why minimalism works or doesn't for me or this or that, you're going to have people coming in that are used to just getting the answer, right? And within the community, I've, spent the 2 years creating like monthly audio courses and all these things with 21 daily episodes, so that you listen to one and it's 3 to 5 minutes, and it's not like, hey, here's how you minimalism. It's like it's always asking a question or helping you set an intention, or it's all just tools guided around this work, which I believe, as it's been told, because not many people leave once they join, I've found, is that the people that come know that this is not a month-long, 30-day, like, cool, I'm going to just fix all this stuff and learn how to do this. And that is really cool because it allows people to get to know each other. And we have people in Russia, in New Zealand, in Germany, and all over the US, and just really spread throughout the world, in the UK even, and that's been just a really beautiful thing, like having such a diverse group of people, that are centered around the Break the Twitch ideals or concept, in wanting to be grounded, pursue intentionality, but we're all sort of doing different things. We have writers and artists and IT professionals, and it's a very interesting thing to bring people together, and I feel blessed with the fact that the internet makes that possible.
Yeah, it's I'm sure you'll be familiar with it, the idea of 1,000 true fans. Do you think you've found your version of 1,000 true fans in that?
Well, at this point, we definitely have 100 true fans for sure. We actually closed down the community for months at a time now. We don't even open it up at this point. We will again soon, but it's been something that we've really just kind of been working on improving the infrastructure of, like, we moved over to Discord from Slack, which was like not a good format for this. And so we've been really working hard for the last couple of months on just pulling together all of the content and the information and delivering the member just value and spaces and meetups for the members that are in now. And so we'll open it again, but yeah, I think this is probably, I'd prefer not to do sponsored videos necessarily. And this really is the work I want to be doing, and connecting around basically all the things that I'm talking about right here. So for people that this resonates with, I mean, that's basically who we're having in the community. That's like what we're doing. So I think you'd be an awesome person. We should have you come in and do some stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing about kind of sponsored videos and stuff like that, it kind of touches on the whole idea of making a living online. There are a whole bunch of ways to do it, and there's no one right or wrong way, and a bunch of people have all sorts of different income streams and things like that. How much have you kind of experimented with them, and how have you found the ones that are right for you? Because I'm very early on my journey, I've not been making stuff for that long, and who knows, I might not get big enough, I might never have to worry about them things, but it's something that is in the back of my mind, like, oh, how eventually might I be able to make a living out of making stuff, So do you mind giving me your experience in that kind of field?
Absolutely not. I would not mind at all. Yeah, I'm gonna pronounce it wrong, but the word for entrepreneur in Finnish is ritaja, which translates to English as trier of things. And it's one of the most beautiful translations of a word, and it's one of the things that I think defines me as a person in a very deep way. And that's the answer. Is I've written an ebook, and I've been at this for 6 years now. And even before that, I was doing I did like a e-commerce startup with some friends selling headlights, and I've experimented for my whole life. And so what it looks like now is it was just kind of one thing at a time and just sort of evolving and letting it go. Break the Twitch started as a blog. You can do some things. I've always been very careful about affiliate links because I'm not, especially early on, it's about intentionality through purchasing was the thing. So it's really, I think, important to, as you're going, explore the things that feel good to you. It was 4 years before I did a sponsored video, and I'm just now doing them, and it's with Skillshare. Only because I believe in learning, I believe in growth, and it's really the first time a sponsor has felt good to me, being like, this aligns with what I believe in. I believe they're offering a very valuable service, and so it aligns. Well, I can do this without any issue at all. The interesting thing about that is I also realized that for quite some time I was avoiding that because of these weird kind of moral boundaries that I was creating that were actually hurting me, that were making it difficult for me to do this full time. And really, I sort of was protecting myself from having to be bigger, if that makes sense. And so what this looked like was started the blog, found, like an affiliate relationship that was good, started making YouTube videos, ran some ads on those, and that's just kind of part of YouTube, unfortunately, just having the ads on there. But wrote the book in 2017 and just sell that as an ebook, and that's just a little bit every month, and then did an audio version of that book that I recorded myself with, which, judging based on your audio quality and voice, you'd kill it doing that, like do that kind of thing. And that it just evolved, and here and there little things add up, and then speaking opportunities come up, and those can be paid and over time, and then the podcast and the community, and now turning that community into the primary thing. Like that's really what I want to do. So like you said, 1,000, like that would be at 1,000 people in that community, I'd probably just turn it off. Like I just wouldn't even go beyond that because that would be where, that could be the full thing. And a lot of things are coming in. I'd like to write another book. I'd love to do a documentary at some point around this stuff from the perspectives that we're talking about and sharing here. But I'd love to chat. I mean, we can chat anytime too, specifically about like strategy and things. Cause I feel your energy with this, and you're starting at such a good time that it's really just ritaja. It's just keep trying things and explore, and it will work. It's just a matter of when. Yeah,
that's a little bit what I'm trying to do right now. I mean, just to give you a quick overview, I've made a bunch of YouTube videos. I'm trying to get back into them, but I've got some other projects coming up. I've made my podcast. I'm trying out 3D animation. I've got this other strange idea with a friend about like this t-shirt thing. I've got a whole load of things that I just want to do. I do want to make a documentary one day. I've got all these ideas that like I just want to try do, and I've not really got a set time frame of when I want to achieve them by. And every single day I learn something new. Every single day I learn a lesson that I wouldn't have learned if I hadn't done one of them things, which just makes it so valuable to me and makes me feel like the failures that I'm having that are very minute at this point. They're not really failures. Like I'm reading a book called what's it called? Think and Grow Rich. That's the one. I'm sure you've read it. I'm sure you've
Classic.
read it. Yeah. And it has this analogy of these people going in and digging for gold, and then they keep on digging and they keep on digging and they keep on digging, and one day they just stop digging because they're like, well, we're not finding any gold. They leave. The next person comes. They do like a couple of digs, and boom, massive gold mine. They make all the money, and it's kind of made me think that no matter how bad things might seem sometimes, no matter how low my views might get or how rubbish I feel when I can't do a certain thing, I'm just like, well, I'll get closer to where I want to be, and I'm developing my craft more and more every day, and that's what matters, I guess. Yeah,
that's literally it. And I would append the analogy of the gold mine with, as you're digging, raising curiosities about, is this pickaxe the best thing I can be using to do this? Like, what would happen if I tried using two at the same time? What would happen if I tried using a different type, a different style? What if the end had 2 points instead of one? By adapting in that way as well, along with the continued approach, 100%. And what I will say is, from what your ambitions, it sounds like you are similar to me in that you are maybe a multi-potentialite, someone that has a lot of passions and interests and curiosity that can lead you. And in a big way, I would say, one, let that gut instinct and that curiosity, trust that to let it take you from one thing to the next and see what feels good and works and what gets a response. But also, at the same time, learn to, if you can, learn to recognize when something gets cut short because of like the twitch or the thing that sort of draws us away to something else. So, because that was something that happened for me early in life. Like, I got into Bitcoin very early, and I got into like other weird things just because I let my curiosity lead. I tried, selling headlights online with friends, like really random stuff. And all of those things, like you said, every single one of those things has added, many of them failures in the traditional sense, but all of them have added to my collective intuition and allowed me to just like feel and understand more about how everything works together. You'll notice that I like kept drawing comparisons to like this thing over here, or religion, but it's also kind of like this and that. And I think that is just what comes with time and repetition. And the one thing, unsolicited advice, if I may, is simply that don't allow all of those things that you want to do to happen at the same time. Because it's very easy to feel like we need to be capitalizing. I've got all these ideas and things are going and I want to do them all. And Seth Godin is great for this in his book, The Practice, and the podcast episodes he does. Talks a lot about how a lot of the time, we need to just be in something for long enough to figure out that route. You don't want to dig in one part of the tunnel, going back to that analogy, for a little bit and then go, and then you go over here and start again, and you're sort of starting that process over and over. But it doesn't mean you only have to do one thing. It doesn't mean you only have to be one thing. It's just allow that flow to be a little uncomfortable and explore it, and then see where it takes you.
See, this is the challenge really that I'm facing. Being able to balance all of these things at once in a way that kind of makes sense, and feeling satisfied that I'm doing enough on each of them to the point where I'm like, yeah, you know what, we're still doing this. I always see online the idea of, finding a niche, and it seems really boring to me to just find one niche. Like there'll be some creators that have like this one niche, and all they do is, I'm basically just quoting Donald Glover here from an interview that he did, but they just find this one niche, these one group of people, and they make content for them people, and that's it. And that just seems boring to me. Like having just one thing that you're known for, one thing that you do, and that's it. That's part of the reason why I don't want to be something like a doctor or a lawyer or like a traditional job, because I feel like, well, now you're just that. Yep, you're Anthony the doctor now. Hi, Anthony. Hi, Dr. Anthony. Like, that seems so... The label seems so restrictive. And so that's kind of why I want to do multiple things at once. But then at the same time, it's difficult to focus on something enough with that curiosity that I have. And it's difficult to kind of know when to stop as well. I mean... I'm very early on, but I have no idea like what it's like to kind of feel whether you should stop something or not. I know that you had your podcast that you haven't done for a long time now, so I think you might be able to give some better advice here. But how do you kind of know when it's time not to give up, but to kind of close a project down, like selling the headlights with your friends, for example?
Yeah. Well, that's so 100%. First, I want to say, like, you're a multi-potentialite, and I love that you brought it full circle, because I was about to do the same thing. Back to the labels. Humans, we want to put things in. We just need to understand. What are you, doctor? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, you gig and play saxophone on the weekends, like at nightclubs too. Like you don't. I love that. One of the things that the biggest things that we can do as people is break open our expectation of what we place on other people and allow people to surprise us, because they will always. Like, there's so many fascinating things you find out about people when you let them not just be a doctor, or, assume, you see all these things. It's like this, you see like someone who is like a stripper or an adult entertainer having this incredibly intellectual conversation on a podcast. And it's like, why is that surprising? These things should not be so surprising to us, that this person is not one-dimensional. And so, that's a huge opportunity. Around knowing when to stop. I really struggled with this earlier in my early 20s. I've done so many things. We don't have time to go through the different jobs I've had, like the interests I've pursued, everything from chess, Python, programming, even in the last couple of years, like music. I'm a musician, I do so many different things. But truly what I've learned is that, one, the times that I would quit things where it was not productive was out of a sinking feeling of, I'm not good at this. I think a lot of my early life relied on the feeling of being good at learning things quickly, and feeling like I had, I could pick up things. I still do, a new thing intuitively. I can generally figure out software quickly. I can figure out how to put something together without really looking at the instructions. But beyond a certain complexity, you need to look at the instructions, and it's not going to feel good. And that's like an ego thing. That's like a deep down here thing. And so for me, the times that I needed to learn to push through were when I'd be doing something, filming my first interview, and it's not going well. And I start getting that sinking. For me, it's in my chest. It's like a shame, like a sinking feeling, like I don't know what I'm doing. Oh my gosh, I'm not good at this anymore. But it's only because you've reached a certain level of competency that now you're actually going to have to work more at it to proceed further. And so if it's that feeling, if you are doing something and exploring a new thing and you've done it for a little bit, a month or two, a couple months, and you're getting to a level of proficiency that feels that you've been moving along to, but then all of a sudden it's like, I'm there right now with chess, by the way. So I'm at the point where I now need to work very hard to memorize patterns and movements,
openings
and end games and openings in order to get any better than I am. I can no longer just keep playing and learn some moves, right? And so that's the feeling to be very aware of, is that if it feels like this sinking moment and all of a sudden something else becomes very exciting and appealing over here, that's a sign. And that took me 15 years to learn. a long time to learn. So that's the sign to look out for when you're probably quitting too early. But on the flip side, I think it's perfectly fine to quit things, to move on to something else if it's not panning out as you expected. But there's a bit of groundedness that's needed, and some again, awareness, right? Attention to what's the feeling that I'm having around this right now, and is this because I'm up against something that's new and different, or is it because our brains are brilliantly tricky and will come up with the funniest thing you've ever thought of to tweet right when you're sitting down to start writing a blog post that you've been avoiding. But the moment you're there, all of a sudden you think of something hilarious, right? And you're like, oh, you gotta go do it now. It's either that, or it's like some household task that needs to get done. All of a sudden, oh, that's right, the laundry. Our brains are incredible at keeping us safe from danger. Whether that danger be a new experience or something we're not comfortable with, or the danger of pouring our heart onto the page. And so we have to be more and more aware. And this is the entire basis of Break the Twitch. So it's wonderful that we're coming back to this idea, but this idea that we need to own, understand, and love our attention so that we can go up. No, I'm not going to tweet that. I'm going to just write it down, and then I'm going to stay right here and sit in this discomfort, and then just let it go. So that's a broad answer to your specific question, but I hope that zones in a bit too.
That has actually really helped. I'm really glad that you mentioned that first part, especially because that's how I was feeling a little bit with making YouTube videos. I was about a third way through making this one video about Donald Glover. You know, I love a lot of the stuff that he does, and he's like a really good role model because he does so much stuff and he's so successful at all of it. And the idea behind the video is, why is Donald Glover so successful? And you know, I was making it, and then I was like going through the script and the voiceover and the clips, and I was just like, is this really that good? Am I good enough to do this? Are people going to agree with what I'm saying? Blah, 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 blah. And now that you've mentioned what you have, I think that feeling that you're describing is exactly what I was going through just there. So I'll try and do my best to push through that and make sure I finish that video. And then when it comes to that, the attention thing that you mentioned, I think we can all relate to that. You know, you get to this point where you've put something off for so long, and then you just think, you know what, right, we're going to do it now. And then boom, all these ideas start pinging around, and it takes so much to just be like, no, I'm going to do this now. It's discipline, I guess. It's discipline, and that's well, I think you put it perfectly. I think you did a TED talk, didn't you? It's something. Is it increased friction, or what is it? Something about friction.
Intentional friction.
Yeah.
It's not just discipline. I think discipline is a great thing that is to be built alongside this, but we need help.
Yeah.
Especially in our modern age, our what we're dealing with, we have every bit of information, we have every ability to connect with people all over the world. It's endless, and so we need help. And so yes, absolutely, one of the strategies is grounding ourselves right before that process, trying to go into a place where we're feeling safe, right? Like where we can put ourselves on the line a little bit and do that thing that feels vulnerable. Uploading a video feels vulnerable. And it's, you're, like you said, you're putting your opinion out there. And the cool thing is it doesn't matter if people agree or not. In fact, it's better if people don't, because that drives engagement on YouTube. And that's a beautiful thing. And I was always afraid of that. I always didn't want to offend anyone. I didn't want to, turn someone off to the work I was doing, because I feel it's very important. But at the end of the day, what matters is that it's your opinion. And a lot of the time, what's going to happen is, when I'm watching this video, whenever it comes out, like, I care that it's your opinion, and that's why I'm watching it. So it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. I want to know what you think. And I love Donald Glover as well, like Jamie Foxx and so many of these true multi-potentialite creators that are doing so in different spaces. And I'd love to know how you think that they are successful in that way, because I think it really takes something takes a lot to make it work without necessarily having one topic that you just kind of keep, and that's what you get known for. But that's the best way to get famous, is like, oh, you're the minimalism guy.
Yeah.
That's what I used to get, right? Like, oh, you're the minimalism guy. Like, sort of, but you just go, okay, yeah, sure. And so yeah, that I've kind of even lost track of the initial part of this, but yeah.
Okay, well, before we kind of wrap this up, because I think we've gone a little bit over time, I'd like to ask all of my guests a series of questions so that I can kind of, one day I'm going to make a compilation of them all and see what people's answers are to all these questions. So the first one is, what do you think it is that sets you apart from anyone else?
Wow. Was not expecting that. I believe that it's I believe that my approach to this work is more approachable than most, and I'm really coming at it from an angle that is not, here's the solution and here's what works and you should do this, but more of an approachable thing that's like something that anyone can get into and think about themselves and hopefully benefit from.
What would be some advice for your younger self?
It would be the thing that I just told you about when you get that sinking feeling, that doesn't mean it's over, that just means that you're stepping into a zone of discomfort, which is actually where your best growth and your best work happens. So if you're doing something for the first time, you're always going to be living in that place. And when you're doing creative work, that's where you got to get used to that. And so learning to get comfortable with that feeling and push through it, then it subsides. The more you go there and you go, wait, like, I'm okay. This is just part of the process. And then it gets easier and easier to do with each new thing you try or do. So it's never easy, but it does become part of the process, I think.
Yeah, I'll bear that one in mind. That's one that I'll definitely keep hold of. The other question would be, do you have any regrets?
I have been cultivating a belief that I am exactly where I need to be. And I think it's easy to say, I wish that I had been able to give that advice to my younger self. But at the same time, I don't think I would have been in a position to hear it and embrace it. I'm only here now because of dropping out of things or trying this and trying that. And I think I've gained a lot of experience and valuable things through the things that have not gone well in my life. And so I will say broadly, no, I don't have any regrets.
Yeah. I mean, you don't know where you'd be without them past experiences, do you? So.
Yeah, exactly. It's impossible to know, and would I roll the dice right now and to get a random genetic start over and a totally different situation? I don't think so. No. So here we are. It's hard to say that I regret anything if that's the case,
Yeah. You've obviously had a lot of success. You've built an incredible community, it seems. You've shared your content all over the internet, lots of views and subscribers and all them things that I don't know if they really matter or not, but you have had success, let's say that. How much of that success do you think is down to your hard work, and how much of that success is down to chance?
I have been in a place where before 2020, I felt that most of the things that have happened that are good for me in my life have come down to chance and luck. And I am learning to embrace the fact that, both now my wife and I have been working on this for years. And I personally, when I started in 2014, and, I've been working on this literally, you could say, since I was 14, 15, 16 years old and starting down this path of questioning these things. So I do believe that I can embrace the fact that there's a lot of hard work that has created this, but I do feel very lucky as well.
If you had to try and put a number on it, what would you kind of say?
The cop-out answer would be 50-50, I think.
Yeah, that's the most common one.
But at the same time, I know that I put myself out there. Like, I uploaded the videos. I did, wouldn't be here if I hadn't done those things and met the people that I've met and had the help that I've gotten and all that kind of stuff. But, so yeah, it's hard for me to say. I'm like in a weird, probably 50-50.
Bit of both. Yeah. The final question would be, if you had everybody in the world listening to this podcast, what would be your message to them?
Everyone deserves self-compassion, whether you think you do or not. And it will not make you lazy. Probably that. And follow me at breakthetwitch.com.
I love that. Anthony, thank you very much for coming on this episode. You've just mentioned it there, but if people want to find more of your stuff, where can they go?
The best place for everything is breakthetwitch.com. I'm not really using social media much right now, but there's at BreakTheTwitch on Instagram if I do eventually start posting there, and at BreakTheTwitch on YouTube is the channel. But yeah, everything is at BreakTheTwitch.com. And in fact, I have right on the front page a 40-minute audio lesson with 11 different little mini tips and things around owning your attention, which is the whole broad work I do. So that's free. If anyone's interested in that, it's right on the front page.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. We'll have to do this again sometime. I've really enjoyed it.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure, and I'm thrilled that we've been able to have the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of The Bit Between with Anthony Ongaro. Make sure you go check him out at Break the Twitch. If you want to find more podcasts, just go ahead and search The Bit Between wherever you get your podcasts. Maybe smash that subscribe button, maybe hit a like, leave a comment, all that incredible stuff. And actually, whilst you're here, just quickly follow me on social media at the Sabdog on all social medias. That's at THESABDOG. Big thank you to Anthony for coming on this episode of the podcast, and a big thank you to you guys for listening along. It's not that many of you make it to the end, so I really appreciate if you do, and it means a lot that you're actually getting something out of my content. So yeah, I really appreciate you. You're a true fan, so thank you very much. I'll see you in the next episode of The Bit Between.